at a time when a state is suffering through an economic slowdown, at a time when people in the state have either lost their jobs or are not working as many hours and are wondering how they're going to pay the mortgage. This would be the perfect time to raise a tax at the grocery stores to pay for government overspending. Or, Maureen, am I just being a jerk about this? What do you think?
You're such a cynic.
I am.
Do you really think politicians would want to hurt families and maybe destroy the economy?
No. Because these are all government investments, you understand. These things are going to create jobs. No, I'm still being a cynic, aren't I? All right, what happened, Maureen? What's going on?
Okay, well, we've known for quite some time, and I mean, the people we elect to run things have also known very, very clearly that the state was going to run out of money to fund school construction by essentially 2019. So it's not that far ahead. But until recently, no one has really wanted to talk about it. Now the question has come up, but the question is not how are we going to reduce spending? The question is, where do we get more money? But the answer to the question is really, for politicians, that more money is going to come out of your pocket. And this would be a big mistake. Instead of scrambling around for more revenue, the state must bring spending down to a level that taxpayers are willing and able to pay. So if we take a look a little bit at some of the background, we know that Wyoming has 48 school districts that are indoctrinating. Oh, sorry, I didn't say that. I mean, they're teaching.
See, there's a difference. I am overtly cynical. Maureen is more like a closet cynic. So you'll see that slip out now. Go ahead, Maureen.
So we've got about roughly 93,000 students in the state of Wyoming. Now, since 1998, the Wyoming legislature has appropriated more than $2.6 billion of state funds for school capital construction projects, and that includes new schools and modernizing old schools. Local districts have contributed about another $85 million for enhancements for some of these capital projects. So for fiscal years 1998 through 2016, the legislature also appropriated another $700 million in state funding for major maintenance improvements. So altogether, nearly $3.4 billion of state and local funds have been appropriated for K-12 public school facilities. And the thing is, the people of Wyoming can no longer afford to fund this construction blowout.
Now, am I correct in saying that Wyoming spends really probably in the top 10, if not better, per student in the United States, more money than any other state? I mean, where's our ranking in here? We spend a lot per student.
We do spend a lot per student, and part of the reason for that, as we'll talk about in a second, is because no one is accountable for that spending.
Okay.
The money doesn't come from voters. The money comes from the minerals industry.
Yeah, but the mineral industry is going through a slowdown. So where then do you turn?
Well, your pocket, like I said at the beginning. But what was actually funding a lot of this school capital construction was something called coal lease bonuses. Now, probably most people up in the Gillette area know what a coal lease bonus is, but just for the rest of us down here in other parts of the state and maybe other parts of the country, a coal lease bonus happens when a coal company buys permission to mine coal on federal lands. It essentially makes a big lease payment. Then it pays $3 per acre annually. And once it starts producing, it pays royalties on the value of the coal after it has been mined. So that's about 12.5% of the gross value of coal produced on the surface and 8% for underground coal. Now, since 1995, Wyoming's share of coal lease bonus payments went from about $5.8 million in 1998 to $239 million in 2013, and it sort of fluctuated around a little bit. But I mean, seriously, given the political attitudes towards coal, it really should come as no surprise to people that all existing coal leases and revenues generated from them end in 2019. The federal government has not sold any new leases recently, meaning the source of revenue has dried up and will likely stay that way for the foreseeable future. So what does that mean for school capital construction?
And all of this was on the horizon. They could see this.
They knew for years. They've known for years that there'd be no money by 2019.
That's like when you buy a house and you have a balloon payment down the road, and you know that's coming, but you're not preparing for it. Yeah, I've met people who made that mistake before.
Yeah, I mean, they just had their head in the sand, basically. I mean, why talk about stuff like, where are we going to get the money from, when you don't have to? You know, politicians don't like to talk about those kinds of things, especially just before elections, and that's
no. In fact, if I were to get out in front of the Capitol right now, you and I, next time I'm in Cheyenne, we're going to try an experiment. I'm going to get out in front of the Capitol building, and I'm going to take a tin can, and I'm going to put it in the middle of the road. And wait to see what politician walks out, sees the can, and decides to kick it further down the road, because they just can't resist. It's a science experiment. Roll with me. So where do they get? I know, corny. Go with me on this. Okay, they decided to get the money by taxing the people of Wyoming. And let's face it, we've been a little bit spoiled here because of the minerals royalties. So how do they get the money from us? What's the plan?
Well, so what they did for this session, essentially, so for 1718, what they did, well, what Governor Mead first wanted to do was raid something called the Permanent Land Fund Holding Account, just to give you an example of how complicated this is. The Permanent Land Fund Holding Account is the school rainy day fund. He actually proposed, when he put out his budget back in last December, that he would take the school rainy day fund down to zero. But the Joint Appropriations Committee had other ideas, and they actually took money instead from the regular rainy day fund. Mm-hmm. So the school rainy day fund still has about $68 million left in it. But hey, you know, the minerals industry has been squeezed dry. What to do? Well, our political class is focusing on your wallet. And, you know, there are other options, you know, like, for instance, here's the best one: reduce spending.
Oh, come on. You're trying to get us in trouble here? You can't do that.
Dream on, I know.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so reaching into our pocket, how? Exactly how? Because there were rumors running around for a while here about Wyoming actually having an income tax. And let me tell you something, Maureen. I have made that mistake twice in my life of moving to a state that has a state income tax, and I'm never going to do it again. So if Wyoming were to ever get that, I've got to live somewhere else. So what's the idea? How they want to get the money from us?
Well, the state income tax is certainly something that they may or may not talk about. I think it's one of the least likely taxes that we would see. I mean, the other thing they could do is just take revenue out of the general fund. The question there, though, is, well, which programs are going to have to reduce their spending so that the school capital construction can continue on. But again, we get back to this whole idea that they have to reduce spending. But no, that's not what the Revenue Committee is going to be talking about when they meet next week in Douglas, which of course is very close to Gillette. One of their very, very first things they're going to talk about, which is kind of a crazy thing, and has on the surface some good points, especially if you live here in Wyoming, and that's a wind generation tax increase.
Sorry,
now, don't laugh. I mean, this is serious. Now, you know, right now the state imposes a $1 per megawatt hour tax on wind production.
Yeah.
And I mean, they got a whole $3.8 million in tax revenue in 2015. Now, the Representative Mike Madden, who's the House chairman of the Revenue Committee, has actually talked about a $7 to $10 per megawatt hour tax. Now, if production stayed the same, that 3.8 million megawatt hours, that would result in a $26 to $38 million increase in revenue. Now, recall that we just had the Consensus Revenue Estimating Group, which is the forecasting group or arm of the government, come out with a warning about a shortfall for this year alone, fiscal 2016 alone, of an additional $130 million. Add that to the $160 million that the governor had to cover in his budget for this one fiscal year alone. We had almost a $300 million shortfall. I mean, a higher wind production tax talk is just a total waste of time, because we're looking at a potential $300 million shortfall in each of the next fiscal years, or about $100 million over what they were already talking about. So, you know, I get where Representative Mike Madden, I mean, even me, I mean, I despise anything to do with green energy. It is a total waste of money and a total waste of time, and it certainly does benefit the special interests that lobby for it, but it results in higher electricity costs for families.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is that what the federal government does is pay a $23 per megawatt hour handout to these wind farms, these wind production companies.
Right, and you raise the taxes on this. That means the consumer ends up paying it.
That's right. But I mean, the thing is, I mean, a lot of what you hear is, well, you know, a state tax grab is okay because we're just getting this money back from the federal government. But we've got to say no to all tax grabs, no matter how justified they might appear on the surface. Remember, two wrongs don't make a right.
Right. Okay. Now, oh, by the way, and I've got to hold you through the break if you have time, and I can, because we got to get to what the article was about that I sent you that you had already seen. And one of the plans had something to do with groceries or something like that, taxing that. Well, hang on. But Maureen, I've also got to send you an article because Fish and Wildlife, they say there's going to be another group of wind turbines that are going to go up in the state of Wyoming. And they're taking public comments on a permit to kill about 12 to 13 eagles or more every single year. But of course, if you work out in the oil fields, if any kind of bird dies within sight of your rig, well, I would like you to buy some duct tape, wrap it heavily around your wallet, and hide the wallet somewhere in the cellar. Maybe they won't be able to get at it. What do you think, Maureen?
Yeah, good luck. I mean, the big question here is, who owns your money? Do you own your money, or does the government own your money?
Yeah, I thought I did, but
yeah. Well, people need to let their legislators know who owns their money, right? I mean, as you mentioned at the top of the show, you've got people who are losing their jobs, they're potentially losing their homes. We've got government talking about increasing the property tax, so that that's really make it hard for people to stay in their homes. And then now the other thing you've got people talking about, or these legislators talking about, is putting the sales tax back on food. So we've talked about problem one, and that's where is the government going to get money to continue its school capital construction spending frenzy. Now the other issue is, where is the money going to come from so that local governments can continue their own spending frenzy? Sorry?
Oh, I just want to, yeah.
Because those are the sort of the two areas where the Revenue Committee is going to be focusing on next week in Douglas, and I would really encourage people to go if they can possibly manage. It's on the 11th and 12th of this month. The 11th is when they're going to be talking about school capital construction, and the 12th is when they're going to be talking about, oh gee, let's give local governments the ability to add more sales taxes so that they can continue their spending spree. I mean, if you think about it, if you look at how much employment growth has occurred at the local government level, it's at about 16% between 2005 and 2015. And it's really only just over 2% at the state level. So, I mean, we've had an explosion in local government spending compared to state government spending, which is just crazy when you think about it.
Okay.
And so what are they talking about doing? Well, they're talking about adding more taxes so they can just carry on the same.
Sure.
They're not talking about cutting spending.
Here in Gillette, for example, I've been fighting the Field of Broke. Now they want a water park. I mean, it just continues on with projects like that. I thought in Lander, they had something about a ski resort or something like that was like $5.1 million. Just some of the projects that towns all across Wyoming. Oh, I was in one tiny little town. Maureen, you could literally pick up a rock and throw it from one end of downtown to the next. They have this park with this massive statue that, I mean, imagine a horse that's about 3 times the size of your average horse, and a rider on top of it. And then they had to have a museum and a tourist information center. So they've been building like crazy. So they don't see that this might be the time to scale some of this stuff back, if not stop some of these projects altogether?
Hey, it's not just that. You got to pay these people more money. They all got pay increases. I mean, and don't forget, they have a very, very, essentially they've got the Cadillac health insurance plan. Yeah. And that means that everybody else is going to have to pay higher taxes so that government workers can continue with this Cadillac plan. Right. And then all of those pay increases feed into a bigger pension liability. Where's the money going to come from for all that? These are, I mean, it really where we need to see even bigger spending cuts is at the local level, even more so than at the state level for sure.
Okay. Did I read that, because I had a chance before I got on the air to sort of skim that article, something about taxing food?
Right. So until about 2006, there was actually a state sales tax on food. Now, what the local government option that they're talking about next week at the Revenue Committee would be to allow local governments to add a sales tax back onto food. And I really, I've talked to some people. I mean, the big battle, I think, where we are likely to see at least perhaps a bill for a tax increase, it's going to be on the sales tax end of things, because that's just one of those areas where people can kind of, they can make a case, although it's wrong, that at least it's not an income tax. We can put us on a sales tax as well that people could avoid if they didn't purchase certain things.
Okay, now we're talking certain kinds of food, like maybe going to a restaurant or snack foods, or they couldn't possibly be talking basic groceries.
Well, I think the basic groceries, I think that is what they're talking about.
Oh.
Now, let me preface this by saying all taxes are bad.
Yeah.
But if you do need to fund government, at least the essential role of government, not big horse statues and big pay increases and big expensive healthcare benefits. One of the best ways to do it, or one of the least distorting ways to do it, I should put it that way, is with a low and very broad sales tax. So what I've been talking about is actually eliminating all sales tax exemptions and reducing the sales tax rate so that revenues to government remain neutral. Why that would be good is because you take away all of these benefits to special interests, because we can talk if we have time, we can talk a little bit about.
Now we got about 20 seconds here, but I know you're going to write an article on this, and so I have to have you back. Where do people find your writings and your work?
Yeah, please go to wyliberty.org.
Right.
I'll hopefully have something about this up by next week, but it could potentially be a really good sales tax, really good tax reform.
Okay.
Because at the end of the day,
we hit the break here. Got to go. Thank you, Maureen.
Okay, I'll talk to you later.